Our initial competitive strategy was to minimize costs by spending an optimum amount to manufacture of shoes and maintaining an SQ rating of 4 to pass on savings to the customer. We also chose to borrow extensively to purchase and build capacity in order to achieve economies of scale and sell maximum amount of shoes. We also chose not to compete in private label, except to operate at full capacity to reduce cost of overhead. We systematically increased the number of models offered each year to differentiate ourselves and compete in many segments. So to summarize, our initial corporate strategy was to employ a low-cost, high-volume leadership strategy by selling footwear at low prices to customers. Later, we altered that slightly as a reaction to our industry and focused on higher-priced shoes, still manufactured at low costs, but with increased celebrity appeal to drive higher margin returns. Our forecasted financial performance from year 14 to year 16 was, in a word, dismal. As you can see, the EPS was barely about $3.2 per share. Our return on average equity was at a steady 15%. Our stock price was under 30 throughout. Our credit rating was pathetic at C+, and our image rating was the only thing which stood out at about in the mid-70s. However, all that changed in the later years. Our forecast of market cap was supposed to be $283 million. However, we finished at about $2.076 billion and outperformed our expectations by a factor of 7.3 times. As you can see, the revenue was pretty high at about $530 million. The EPS was 10.98. The return on equity was 30.7. Stock price was 202.83. A very good credit rating at A+, an image rating of 62, which could be because we had chosen to not compete in the private labels, and finishing at a market cap of slightly over $2 billion. We believe that the things we did particularly well include four factors. First is we have a high celebrity appeal, especially in the year 16. It helps us to sell a higher price than our competitors, but we can still sell a lot of products. And the second is because of the celebrity appeal, we increased our prices, especially in the year 16. But as we mentioned before, we successfully sell all of the products in the market. And we launched 500 models very early in the market, in the year 12 or year 13. It helped us to differentiate ourselves from our competitors in a very early stage. And finally, in the year 15, we were able to refinance our long-term debt with the lower interest rate debt, and it helped us to get a very better credit rating at the end. And the things we did not quite well, and it makes us some trouble. It includes also four things. First is we borrowing too much too early. In the year 11, we began to borrow, and in the year 12, we also borrowed a lot. And this actually brings us very high interest expense. So from year 12 to year 14, we spend the highest interest expense in our industry. And also, we think that we built our capacity too soon. We begin to build it in year 11, year 12, and also year 13. We even buy 2,000 capacity in North America, which is proved to be a wrong idea. This mistake made us have a lot of more capacity than we need, and we have to deal with them both in the branded market and in private label. And also, it brings us a very high depreciation expense as well. And the third thing is in the year 14, we did a very wrong market estimation, and it led to our stock out, and we lost our market share. And finally, in the year 15, we sold 2,000 capacity in Latin America on the market. Actually, that is a wrong idea because in the year 16, we actually can use all this capacity to compete with our competitor, but we just lost this market share. The things we will do differently, as we mentioned before, we learn from our mistakes. So we definitely will build our capacity later, probably begin from year 13 to year 14. And we will issue more stock and borrow less. Also, we will invest in our celebrity appeal or other differentiation tactics from very early years. And finally, we will use the industry forecast options prudently to prevent any stockouts or overproduction.